Hi, welcome to New Wave Aquatics. I have decided to do this video after 2 days ago I came across a photo which I took for my Instagram account some time ago, and found a similar photo which I took on the day, and I was quite surprised with the amount of growth of my Montipora corals in the tank. Now, we all want corals to grow fast and to be healthy and develop quickly, especially if you're running a little commercial enterprise like me. The reason why I decided to make this video is that this amount of growth I have seen in a period of less than 2 months was something I haven't seen before. So let me explain. The 2 tanks which you see behind me, in overall they are shallow reef grow out tanks, and overall capacity is 600 liters. They were set up and installed and running as a Triton method, which I believe is the way forward in overall aquarium industry, as it was for me very clear that it's taking certain natural approaches to making sure that the aquarium is healthy and that we are reducing amount of water changes which is needed. All of you have probably heard about it and read about different types of dosing methods, and Triton method is just one of them. They have a certain specifics which they're expecting you to do. The Triton sump needs to look a certain way, and you need to have an algae bed, which is absolutely fine. And all of that worked for me, and I had a very successful systems which were running off it. More than that, my clients have been using Triton method, and I still use it with them. But today I wanted to talk about Fauna Marin, another company which slowly but surely came into my life a few months back, when I first saw videos from Aaron's aquarium. Hi Michael. And he was talking about certain products they have, and then he went and visited their factory and their facilities in Germany, and I started slowly one by one testing their products. As much as this is the growing area for my corals and I develop certain things, I want to test things, what's working, because nowadays technology, even in the aquatics world, is improving enormously, and we all heard about automated alkalinity testers, and this system is run on Alkatronic and Dosatronic from Focustronic guys. Hi Eric. So I was not very comfortable about switching the whole system straight away. I have over there a second system, about 350 liter stacked tanks, which are at the moment quite dirty, need a bit of cleaning and resetting. I started testing on there, and everything was absolutely fine, no issues. But what I noticed, and that corals were looking plumpier, they were looking bigger. Overall, things were looking bit better. So one crazy morning I woke up and I said, right, I'm switching. So having Alkatronic in my on my system, I was quite convinced that alkalinity is going to be stable, and I'll at least not going to have any problems with that. So I decided I'm going to mix the mixes and do it. I ordered a bowling set from Fauna Marin, and this came. Obviously not just that, it was quite amazing. I put it even on my Instagram. I was quite surprised pleasantly. They provide you the bottles for mixing and the labels for the bottles, but they even provide you the hoses to link it to your dosing machine, and even the caps of the bottles, 5 liter canisters, are drilled. So I thought that saves me a bit of time. That's great. Mixed it all up and off it went. So in this video I thought to give you an idea of what happened, what I'm using, and what are the outcomes. For me, if you visited my website, one of the first statements for me is sustainability. and the stop using the natural resources, growing corals in captivity. And I think that the whole industry is slowly and surely moving towards that. We all know what happened with Indonesia imports and all that. So all the corals with my clients are coming from these tanks, and they're grown here. If I'm buying corals, they will be bought on a small quantities, just in order to start growing particular variety in my little facility. So I mixed the whole thing, and the first thing I noticed, as you all know, whoever done any bowling mixing of calcium, magnesium, calcium will heat up the water quite a lot because of the reaction, and magnesium, usually you need to warm up the water for magnesium to dissolve, and it's always the one which is problematic to dissolve. And actually those two dissolve straight away. The one which I am struggling a little bit is the KH mix, which is probably bicarbonate of soda, but not a big deal. I just mix bigger batches so I don't waste too much time mixing. I'm using a stirrer, magnetic stirrer, which goes at the bottom of the cylindric canister which I'm using for mixing, and off it goes into the appropriate canister. But then there were three elements which go. Two of them, trace bonding elements, trace 1 and 2 are going into calcium, and 3 goes into alkalinity mix. And I put them in as prescribed in the on the bottle, and everything was okay, seemed alright. And those things started. Within about 2 weeks, I have noticed that I'm kind of running out of space in the main tank here, which is for the colonies, and I started taking notice that the extensions of the corals are quite fast happening. My calcium and magnesium were controlled, and I tested, and it's all happening. I used the ICP testing, and you all heard of it. ICP, Fauna Marin or Triton. It doesn't matter which one you use. This one is cheaper, this one is more expensive, this one comes in the email back to you, this one goes on their website. For me, at the end of the day, the question is, what do you do with it? So one concern which I had when I did first amount of dosing is, will my parameters on micro and macronutrients be good as they were with Triton? The Triton was that easy. You send the test, you get the results, and they tell you dose this much, same as what Fauna Marin does, dose this much and that will happen, that is going to be fine. But I am the kind of a person who likes to go in and out of these things in terms of knowing why my consumption is going that much and this much, and why certain corals absorbing more than the others. And due to the nature of these tanks, that there is constant change, constant fragging, constant selling, constant new changes in, I really needed to be more in control myself than having to test ICP tests all the time, sending ICP tests all the time. So what very quickly I realized that on Fauna Marin website, as you do your research, I read all of their support materials, and I would urge everybody to have a look at the Fauna Marin website. On the support pages in English section, there are certain ways of how to set marine tanks from different angles. So if you are preferring to have a Triton method approach, i.e. with the algae bed, you use it this way. If you are preferring to do zeolite approach with a low nutrient, you do that way. So for me, that straight away was a notion that all their products, you don't have to chuck the baby out of the bathwater and then start rebuild the whole system for that. You can slowly start introducing things and using them how you feel fit, and looking at the response of the living organisms in your tank. So as I said to you, the sum down there was the Triton built, and I had a algae bed in the middle, water was running through it, all fine. But I was always struggling with keeping it clean, and I am obsessive about those things. So first thing I changed, I bought algae reactor because I couldn't cope with all of that. And these are the growing tanks. These are not the show tanks. So there is no plenty of rock in there to do the biological filtration. So what I have put in straight away are the max spec microspheres, which, if you know about, are absolutely fantastic to what they do, and I stick to the prescriptions. Have a look at that product as it is. So I started dosing, and my first concern straight away was my algae bed. My algae in the reactor, are they gonna survive that? Not because the Triton approach was not a bowling method. The Triton was with the algae bed. That means that in their solutions I was using, they were putting some additives which were supporting algae growth, macroalgae, Cheeto and others. So I was worried, am I going to lose them? Are they going to melt? Are they going to disappear? No, they're not. They're actually growing absolutely fine, no issues at all. So I dug deeper into it all and read more about it. So after a few months, it was I think 3 or 4 months, I read more and looked more and found the ingredients of the products, and then started using some additional things. First, what I introduced to the tank are the color elements. As you know, when you're growing corals, everybody wants it to be a vibrant, colorful thing. And if you're looking behind me on the video, there are 2 types of light. I'm a max spec addict, and I have most of their products. And this is a max spec RSX 300, I think, longest one they have, 1.5 meter for 5-foot tank. And over there are T5s for aquatics, which I like, and I work with that company on a few products they're using, which are absolutely fine. So Fauna Marin, the products which they're producing and testing in their facilities and then putting on the market are focusing on producing the outcomes for people who are using mainly LED lights, because that's what they think, that's where everybody's going, just from all sorts of other reasons. But for me as a grower, at a certain periods of time, how much money I invest in what, T5s are always cheaper. To put in electricity consumption is more or less the same. Yes, there is a heat output, so extractors are on all the time, air conditioning comes on here and there. But the growth from using Fauna Marin on both lighting setups is as equally as good. There is no difference between the two. So the difference is the color feedback you're getting from light, because with the LED lights you are having output on quite a few channels and you can change it and improve it. You're getting better color, where on the T5s it's not that case. I would have to have more actinic, which I don't want, so I have a particular setup which I do. So to grow them, they go in there. If I need to take the picture, if a customer comes to visit and want to buy a coral and say, oh, it doesn't look nice, I put it under this light and colors straight away pop up, which is absolutely amazing. So I started using the color improvement elements. These are same and similar to the elements which are going in the initial boiling mix, but there are certain differences which I would suggest you check in detail. I'm not going to bore you with the names. For example, iodine is not included in these. It's up there in the basic boiling, and as you know, iodine you need to add on the concentrate, because that's the one disappearing quite quickly out of the water. And then I thought, okay, what about organics? These tanks are fed quite a lot, especially coral food. There are fish in there who are workers, my grasses and my tangs, and a few of the colorful one for mother-in-law when she comes in to see it. Hi Erica. And I feed the fish with the live food or dried food. If you want to know, for example, these are the 2 which I recently discovered and quite nice. Colorless is my preferred option for feeding fish when it comes to dried food, and there are certain frozen foods which I get as well. There is a very nice liquid feed from Colorless as well, suspension, which is absolutely fantastic. You should see fish going mental over it. And with those I introduce a lot of feed for the fish in the tank. That in turn introduces as well certain amino acids and other things which corals need. But I thought, in order to support coral growth, because increase in size, I noticed that for example, Montipora expansions and certain Acropora's extensions were not as thick as the base was before. They were consuming calcium, because I can see that from the testing, but they were not consuming as much. So I said to myself, I need to improve that. So I dwelled further into it and realized that I was always running high, as you call it, it's not high nutrients, but high phosphate and nitrate tanks, and from that reason I needed to reduce it down for the corals to start absorbing better. And to help me with it, to be specific about amino acids which I'm putting in, of course I looked around, and since I started with Fauna Marin, I said, let me try what they do, because you start gaining trust into the company. And then I bought Amin. Words escape me when I think about it, because the moment I used it, everything in this tank just exploded. With the Triton, I always was managed to get a healthy coral, stable system, not a problem. But with these products here, I don't know, because with the Triton you don't know the breakdown of the elements. I started looking into more detail scientifically which of these elements are so important. We all know from the list of ICP tests which are important, what are they doing. But then I started looking more detail which amino acids are there, and then there are two groups of amino acids which are important for the coral development, for zooxanthellae to get enough and be able to consume enough from the water column. All of them are here, and that for me was okay. That's it. That's the one I'm using. And then problem started. As you know, if you have fish and fish tanks, most of the people, when it comes to fish, they feed them like mad, and I'm not as much interested in fish. I'm interested in corals, so I feed them as much as I can and the system can take. So I think overdone it. I followed the instruction, but I overdone it because it didn't include the amino acids and all that stuff which is coming from the feed which I'm using. Because if you're having liquid suspensions like Calanus, there is loads of amino acids in there, or Calanus dry food, there is loads of amino acids which are coming with it. So immediately I noticed my algae bloom went through. Not cyano, because I have a mad flow with the Maxspec gyra in there. I make sure that there's no dead spots and all of that, but the algae. So my tanks were going quite fat quickly. So I halved the dosage of it. And by the way, I don't know if you've come across any other product. These amino acids go half a milliliter per 100 liters. So this bottle is going to last a long time. So I had to reduce that. Lesson is start less and increase gradually and slowly. Lesson of marine keeping: don't do big changes, don't go mental, but hey, you learn, live and learn. So I reduced the amount of this, and now I'm dosing the half of the amount, and instead of daily I'm dosing it weekly. I had to dilute it. Guys from Fauna Marin, if you're watching this, tell me if I done wrong or not, because I diluted it with RO water. I don't know, but that is the product which I'm using in combination with all of those. I forgot to mention the color enhancers. If you want microelements, I'm adding those once a week or once every 2 weeks, because I do my ICP test relatively once a month. So I know if one element goes out of kilter, and then I reduce the particular bottle I'm using. And most of color, for example, here are purples and greens, so I don't use as much as a red element as such, because you will see the repetition of the certain elements in these color combinations. So the corals which need that element get it anyway. But you need to try it. And then came the feeding. Now, as I said to you, I'm using fish food a lot. Most of the people don't feed their corals in their tanks. This is a coral facility. I need to add those things because I need the growth, not as fast as I'll never achieve what is in the sea, but I want them to grow. I want them to multiply. I want them to just thrive. That's my obsession. And then I decided to look into what Fauna Marin does about the food. So this was the reason why I reduced my amine when I fed the corals. This is min S. You heard people talking how wonderful it is and all of that. Min S ensures that your corals constantly receive enough food. So it's a very small particle, liquid fertilizer, well, something like that, liquid food, and corals absorb it over a longer period of time. It doesn't get lost easily through the skimming. This is as well adding those amino acids and natural fats to the water, and you can see it floating on the surface. I usually would mix this with the coral food together when specifically doing targeted feeding of a certain tanks, certain groups of corals, and switch off machinery for the few minutes. And then there is coral sprint. Now, I haven't done video on this, but this is it literally comes across as a sprint of the corals to feed. Promotes extreme reaction of LPS and SPS corals to opening up and grabbing the food from the coral. So this one I don't use that often because it comes in small packages and I didn't want to overdo it. But because they're getting the coral food anyway, once a month I will do that big boost before I change a bit of water later. So on a day I will feed heavily everything, the corals in there, let everything absorb as much as possible, and then switch on the skimmer and the pumps and get it out as much as possible with the water change after. After that, there is no need for amino acid because you have introduced a lot at the same time. So those are the two coral feeds which come from Fauna Marin, but there are two which I as well use in combination because they're similar but different, especially my LPS food from First Bite from BC UK. Hi guys. And there is SPS coral food, which is powdered form, needs to be dissolved, similar to the coral sprint. It's just that these two you're using in much lesser quantities, but this coral sprint you need to dissolve quite a lot. All smell similar. You wouldn't be able to distinct the difference between them because it's a dry frozen food, but I'm liking variety, so I'm not going crazy. I'm not sticking just with one, but those are the things which I tried. So overall, looking at these things, I can say only one thing: if you are doing boiling dosing or using the Triton, carry on with it, not a problem. But if you're not getting desired coloration of the corals in your tank, or you cannot do enough to boost the growth, if you want them growing faster, it's worth trying some of the Fauna Marin products. They don't need you to change to Fauna Marin. What they need you to do is just try certain things. One thing I would say to you, if you are using any other boiling method or dosing method, I wouldn't be starting to dose these elements of the color in there first. I would first try some of their coral enhancing growth products like the amine and the foods, as well as any other foods you want to use for the corals if you want to do that. If you are constantly having the lack of trace elements inside, macro and micro elements, I have to say, for somebody who is using a lot of this stuff, Fauna Marin is a little bit cheaper on individual bottles of the additives, same concentration than Triton, but Triton on the other hand has something which for me should be good, but for the people with the smaller tanks might be a trouble. Triton bottles of 5-litre liquid or whatever you buy are highly concentrated, so you're using much less of it, which is fine, and somehow price equates at the end. It doesn't make much difference. But I've noticed with some of my clients who are having smaller tanks and doing dosing, it is very difficult to do the accurate dosing all the time from the point of calibration of the dosing peristatic pumps. And some of them are deciding to switch to Fauna Marin because you will use more of the liquid, but at least you'll be able to track it much better. So those are kind of a good and bad sides. But whatever you're doing with your system, if you take anything from this video I'm going on about, is make sure that you read those 2 or 3, I think, PDF documents from the Fauna Marin website, that you have a look at what they're saying about different systems, how to do it. Because, for example, if you were running zeolite system, these micronutrients will go in a different quantity inside of your bottle where you're mixing the calcium, magnesium and alkalinity mix. So they will not be equal for all. They've done it, they've tested how the products fit in to make sure that you're getting that stability. And before you go with any of it, make sure that you do the ICP tests. These are still going to Germany. I'm hoping that one day we'll have them in the UK. These are still going to Germany. I have to say, same amount of time getting results from Germany and UK. It's about 3 to 4 days, so no problem at all. Test your water, get what information you're getting, and then decide which way you want to go with it all. But for me, and for these fellas inside here, I think Fauna Marin is going to be the way I'm going to stay for a long time, until somebody better comes with something else. Thank you very much for your time. If there are any questions you would like to post, please do let me know. Subscribe to the channel, because I will start doing certain videos on there from the point of experience and personal notes on the products and the ways of doing reef tanks. Thank you.